The question is not, do people reincarnate? The question is, do animals reincarnate? I suggest yes, and here's why. Okay, this story goes back probably 25 years. It starts with my daughter, my wife and I living in Fraser Park, and we had a dog named Dottie. And Dottie died by eating some poison somewhere, and she died in my wife's arms with our daughter right nearby, and it was all very traumatic. And my wife said to our daughter, in an attempt to try to relieve some of the fear and pain and confusion about the death of the dog, that that Dottie's spirit and soul is still alive somewhere, and that someday she's going to come back to us in the form of another dog. Okay. Now, my wife tells me that, or told me back then, that she actually didn't really believe that, but for some reason she had the inspiration to say that. Okay, so several months pass, and she was not looking for a dog. But she gets a call from a dog breeder who a friend of Carla's mentioned what had happened with her dog. I don't know or recall exactly how it all came about, but someone called Carla up out of the blue to say, yeah, we've got a bunch of dogs, and maybe you should check them out for your daughter. And they're Chihuahuas, and they're really cool. And by the way, did I tell you that one of them is named Dottie? Okay, so somehow like Dottie showed up, that name. So obviously my wife was intrigued by that. She took our daughter down there. So they go down to check out a whole bunch of puppies. There's about a dozen there. Carla wanted to try to be as, I guess, scientific as she possibly could to determine, if Dottie was Dottie, or if Dottie was supposed to be the dog for them. And so what she did is she told the guy, don't tell us which one is named Dottie, don't tell us anything. Let's just put the dogs in a room with Maxie, our daughter. Okay, so there are a dozen puppies, and they're just all kind of running around and doing stuff and jumping all over her, and it was just impossible to really tell anything. So what they did is they took each little puppy into the rooms individually with Maxie, and all of the puppies, to a large degree, ignored her, and were just walking around and sniffing at stuff and, oblivious, except for one dog. Yeah, Dottie. So we took Dottie home, and she was our dog. And then many years later, Dottie died, and so now Carla did a whole bunch of reading and research about people who believe that animals can reincarnate, and she came to the conclusion that it could happen, and that it usually takes about 90 days, I guess, for the dog's soul to process the previous life or whatever, and pop back into a body, and she believed that there would be signs of some sort that would guide her in the proper direction to find her reincarnated Dottie. All right, so months passed. There were no signs. Initially, she had said to me, don't go online, don't Google, don't try to help me. by seeing if you can find a Dottie dog out there, because I don't, that would be us kind of pushing the river, or creating something artificial. She wanted it to be organic. She wanted it to just kind of happen. And that was the best way to believe that it would be the truth. It would be the reality, that not a fantasy. So I didn't do anything. I respected her wishes and I left it alone, but she was very distraught. And a couple of months passed. I think probably around 3 months passed, and nothing had happened. And so I did go online, and I searched for a Dottie Chihuahua. And it came up with a dog named Dottie, a Chihuahua puppy that was born like a few days ago, or a week ago, or so, I don't know what, but it was born recently up somewhere in northern Wisconsin, right? Now, here's, okay, so I didn't say anything to Carla, though, because she had told me not to look, so I didn't say anything. And what happened was, turns out she contacts me later in the day to say, I kind of broke down, and I went and did a search for Chihuahuas, and I came up with a dog named Dottie, a puppy in northern Wisconsin. She had found the same one that I had found. We both thought that was interesting. The photo of the dog named Dottie, okay? The dog it was a Chihuahua, had the exact same color and markings as the original Dottie, or as that Dottie Chihuahua that had just passed. And the Dottie that had just passed had a heart-shaped little birthmark or color that was on her white fur. There was like a brown heart. The new Dottie had the same heart-shaped, colored-shaped heart on her body in the same place. Okay, now I know there are a lot of skeptics out there who are going to say that's just a coincidence, and all this stuff is wishful thinking and magical thinking, and it's all coincidence, and it doesn't mean hooey. And you're entitled to believe that. I don't care one way or the other. I'm not invested in this. I just believe this. I believe the universe is miraculous and strange. I believe anything is possible. When quantum physics tells us that reality isn't reality until you observe it. When quantum physics tells us that every choice we make creates like an alternate parallel universe in a different time and space. All bets are off about what reality is and what reality manifestation is, and are we really living in some kind of a hologram of some sort generated by our collective consciousness? In any event, okay, so that's the Dottie part of this story. Now we move to me, and we move to my dog situation. So several obviously several years ago. At this point, about eight years ago, I had a dog named Juno, and Juno passed. And when he passed, I was pretty bummed out by it. And Carla said to me, "Don't worry. If you want him to come back, pray for him to come back. If you want him to come back, pray for him to come back. If you want him to come back, he'll come back. We will find him. Look for the signs. Look for the signposts. Look for the symbology, and you will be guided to the reincarnation of Juno." Okay, so I was pretty bummed out, and a couple of months had passed, and there were no signs. There was no indication that Juno was anywhere in sight. So Carla said, "Be patient. Something will happen." Okay, then a few weeks later, she is at the feed store getting some stuff for the horses, and she's got Dottie in her arms. And the lady behind the counter says to her, "Would you be interested in another dog? Are you looking for another dog?" And out of nowhere. And Carla goes, "Not me personally, but I know somebody who is." And then the lady said, well, there's a whole bunch of puppies that are available now. And Carl said, okay, give me the name. We'll go check it out. And the name of the woman who had been breeding all the puppies, her name was Grace Jacobson. Okay. And for those of you who may have forgotten, my name is Jacobson. So that was a sign right there. And a bigger sign than you might think, because it's not just Jacobson that was obviously a red flag, but also the name Grace. And here's why. Now, I'm a very. What's interesting is people may think that it's paradoxical or odd or confusing or weird, but I'm actually a very scientific person. I'm very logical, analytical, practical. I'm scientific. I believe in facts. Okay, but at the same time, I also, as I kind of said already, believe in the mysteries of the universe. Okay, so something that I actually have been fascinated by all along the way of the past many decades is the I Ching. The I Ching is an ancient tool for guidance, and it's quite amazing. And I'm not going to get into detail about it, but it's quite incredible, and it's based on the idea of synchronicity that Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, talked about. He was also a mystic, and he discussed the idea that everything's connected, not always causally, but everything's connected. We just can't see the connections, and so what we call coincidences are actually meaningful. They're not like accidents. They're not just meaningless. Coincidences are meaningful. Connections. We just can't see the meaning from the place where we're standing, from the perspective that we're in at the time. We can't see it, but everything's connected in some way. And so the I Ching is based upon the idea is that when you throw these coins down, they'll land in a certain pattern. That's not an accident. The pattern is based upon who you are, the question you asked, the forces going on in the universe at that moment of your inquiry. And so it's not an accident how they land, and the reading that you get, the guidance that you get is not an accident. It will be related to the question that you asked. Okay, so it's quite an amazing thing, and I would encourage you, if any of you are intrigued by this, to check it out. You can actually get a workbook on Amazon, an I Ching workbook by a guy named Wing, which is really a simple one, but a really good one that I use. Okay, so there are hexagrams. There are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, and everything's, and then you have all these messages for every hexagram. And so one hexagram might be new beginnings, and one might be after the end, and one might be well, there's all sorts of things, titles to these hexagrams, but one of them is grace. Actually, hexagram 22 is grace. Okay, I need to give you one more piece of the puzzle before we see how Grace Jacobson, how significant that might be as a sign. I also have dabbled in numerology. I get a kick out of numerology. Numerology is also sort of a system to divine the future, so to speak, or to predict the future, just like the horoscopes are. The premise of a horoscope is that the planets are aligned in a certain way, and when you're born, that is significant and predictive of the type of personality you have, the type of destiny you might have in this lifetime. Numerology is sort of the same thing. You come into the planet with your birthday and your name. They break down into a numerological system. They break down into numbers, and those numbers can be used to tell you about yourself and about what your life path and what you're capable of doing in this lifetime. Okay, so in the numerology, when you break down my full name, it breaks down to the number 22. And when you break down my birth date, it also breaks down to the number 22. And 22 is actually believed to be one of the master numbers in the universe, one of the master numbers in this numerological system. Okay, so 22 is my number. In the I Ching, 22 is grace. Okay, Carla bumps into this lady who's got dogs, and her name is Grace Jacobson. Significant. Coincidence? Okay. Meaningful coincidence? I think so. So we go to check out these puppies, and there were actually like 2 litters of puppies. So we're looking at like 20 puppies running around like crazy. And we have no idea, which one might be Juno. But interestingly enough, the date that these puppies were born was September 22nd. Okay, and then we're starting to see a little cluster of coincidences, okay, which I think are making the case here. Now, before I go even further, I have to backtrack and give you a little bit of backstory regarding the day that Juno died. The day that Juno died, I was bummed out. We had to put him down because I was carrying him around everywhere. I had to hold him up for him to pee and poop. But finally, he was just in so much pain. It was obvious that I couldn't keep him alive for me. He was not happy, and so we needed to put him down. And it was like a terrible, 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 terrible experience. And so Carla and I are with the vet, and Juno's just been put down, and I'm sobbing pretty good actually. And a nurse comes in and says, "Do you want an urn?" And and I said, "No, I don't want an urn because I don't care about that stuff. He's always going to be in my heart and mind. I don't really need an urn to memorialize him." But Carla said, "Get an urn." She was into urns, and she was very adamant about it. She said, "You need an urn." Yeah, well, you learn when you're in a relationship with somebody that whether you think they're out of their mind or not, it's usually best to go, okay. That's at least what I discovered. And so I said, okay, I'll take an urn. And by the way, there it is. Wait a second. There. Oh, I'm very bad at using. It's behind my head there. A little urn there next to the fern. Okay, next to the Maryland thing is that little silver urn. Okay. In any event, so she said, "Get an urn." We got the urn. We go home. I'm like numb. I'm not into doing anything. We're just hanging out there, kind of grieving, and we turn on the TV set. And on the TV set, an old Albert Finney movie called Saturday Night, Sunday Morning appears on the screen. And at that moment on the screen was a scene in which some homeless guy of some vagrant goes up to a storefront with a brick, throws the brick through the storefront, and breaks the glass. And then what happens in the scene is all the people come out and they want to have this guy arrested. And the Albert Finney guy says, "Leave him alone. He's got enough problems. He's not stable. Just let it go." Okay. So it didn't matter what the storefront was. It didn't matter, why he threw a brick into that particular store, because it was irrelevant. What mattered was our character, Albert Finney, saying, "Leave the guy alone," showing that this was his nature. So it didn't matter what the store was. It could have been anything. Could have been a pottery store. Could have been a drugstore. Could have been anything. Okay, but what it was a funeral parlor. And when the guy threw the brick through the wall, through the window of this funeral parlor, he started screaming, "I need an urn. I need an urn." Okay. All right. Now let's flash. Flash forward to right. We've got like a couple of. We got 20 puppies running around, and we don't know which one is which. And Carla said, "Just step back and empty your mind, and try to see, look at the puppies, get a feel for them, see where it all might go." All right. So I was looking at the puppies moving around, and they have different spots and colors and this and that. But there was one puppy that it was white, but it had like a brown coloring right on the top of its body, shaped like a hand. It was as if, you know, okay, I'll say it. Perhaps the hand of God reached out to put a handprint on that puppy as a sign, as a clue that that was the one for me. But I didn't put that together. That the hand itself, it seemed like it was a hand, but the color of the hand was Juno's color, was brown, the brown color of Juno. So I picked that dog and took her home, and I named her Gracie in honor of Grace, the woman who had raised the pups. And now Carla was kind of concerned that, well, did I get the right one? Did I get Juno? And she was kind of concerned about it. And I think like the next day she was driving somewhere, and she was stopped at a stoplight, and the license in front of on the car in front of her had a hand and the letters URN, earn. Remember, I said the hand looked like someone had taken a hand with brown paint on it and had grabbed the dog, and then I also told you about I need an urn. Carla said you need an urn, and then we go and we watch this movie, and at that moment the guy's screaming, "I need an urn." Okay. So she felt that was validation that we had gotten the right puppy. What I found to be a validation as well is the fact that Gracie, honestly, truly, acts like Juno, has the same behaviors as Juno, and there's no reason why she would. She would stand on the spiral staircase we have in the same spot Juno would stand when he would be looking at me, and she would stand on the same spot. And that was unusual behavior of Juno's, and she seems to have found that behavior as well. You don't see that happen in general, where the dog will pick a spot to stay, and it turns out to be the exact same spot that your dead dog picked. So I thought that was kind of significant. And she had other behaviors that was like Juno as well. So it doesn't matter whether Gracie is Juno or not. I wouldn't lose any sleep if somebody, said, "Hey, guess what? The joke's on you. It's a different dog." I mean, come on, who cares? I don't really care. It's an interesting, mental exercise. I like the idea. I'm certainly, moved by the idea that it could be the same dog, and that we are, continuing our relationship over multiple lifetimes. But I'm not emotionally invested in it. I just think it's a fascinating series of coincidences. But here's the final interesting sort of footnote is, a couple of weeks ago, I upgraded my, I got a new iMac, and the newest operating system, the newest photos, they enable you to organize your photos according to different faces. So if you click on, if I click on in my photo album my face, it'll do a facial recognition of all the faces in my photo library and come up with the 35 photos of my face. So if I click on Carla's face in one of the pictures, it will then it'll go and do a face recognition of all the faces in my photos. And come up with all the photos of Carla. or of Maxie or of anybody else, right? So what did I do? I clicked on Gracie. So I would get all the Gracie pictures in one, in one collection, right? Facial recognition. The facial recognition of the computer came up with, I think, 26 identifications of dog faces being Gracie, except that two of them were pictures of Juno. So the facial recognition recognized Juno as Gracie. I know. Fun and games. Make what you will of it.